How old were you when you were first ever remanded into custody?
15.
15.
Yeah.
We walked over, I looked in the flap, and there was just a pool of blood.
You're hyper vigilant all of the time. You can't rest.
Do you look back now and think that's insane?
I think if you just tried to explain it to someone that's not worked in a prison, it's hard. They can't really understand what you've seen.
I was terrified of change. That's what was going on. I was terrified of leaving that culture, what my friends would think, and it's frightening. I didn't know the way forward.
So I'm going to start with you, Tom. Tom, I mean, so I don't take this the wrong way, but a lot of people would say that like being a prison officer is like the same as being a traffic warden. It's like that you have to be a special kind of person to be able to do it. So I'm treading carefully there. So when was it in your life when you thought, do you know what, I quite fancy a job in a prison?
I kind of stumbled into it, to be honest.
Right.
I'd been in the military for 14 years. I came out. I didn't immediately want to go back into uniform. Kind of took a break from it, trying to adjust to civvy life. And it was a friend of mine who was already a serving prison officer who was also in the military with us.
Right.
And he just mentioned it to us, went along, filled the form in. Next thing I got an interview and there you are. Ended up at Durham Prison. Done 28 years altogether.
28 years.
I had no intentions. It wasn't the job I thought about going into till I'd spoke to my mate, to be fair. So I kind of stumbled into it.
Yeah. So so you kind of stumbled into it, but there must have been something that appealed to you. Was it like that sort of regimented nature of it because of...
I think it was the uniform, yeah. And I looked at it as something similar to the military, where camaraderie and team ethos and that sort of stuff. It wasn't quite the same. I was quite disappointed when I actually got in, but there you go.
So how does the training go? So like the money's good?
Money.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard.
That was a big draw.
I've heard there's no prison officers with small houses. Is this true?
It's the pension as well. There's not a better one.
Yeah, brilliant.
So, yeah.
So talk us through it then, Tom. So the decision's made. I'm going to be a prison officer. What happens to you next?
Right, you go on a 12-week training course.
Yeah.
I done mine at Wakefield, which is where real screws go.
Yeah.
Prison officers, they go to the other.
All right. So there's a difference there. So there's screws in prison officers, and you're a screw, are you?
I went to gladiator school. Yeah.
Got you. Yeah.
You do 12 weeks there. Yeah, go through a range of things, like a lot of paperwork, a lot of procedures, certain things, security issues, and that sort of stuff. And then off to Durham I went.
So tell us about your first day then. So you arrive at Durham, you go on reception. I mean, are you sort of mentored around for a bit, or?
You do get allocated a mentor, but not in the first day. But I'll always remember my first day. I walked onto E-wing, and like all the cons were leaning over the railings. It was the noise, the smell, and I was shitting myself.
Right,
Excuse me, language.
No, yeah.
It was just like it felt like everybody was looking at you.
Yeah.
And that was my first recollection.
And did it? And like the inmates can spot somebody who's green, who's been remanded. So can they spot the green officer as well?
Fresh as fish, yeah.
Yeah.
I was a new fish, aye.
And so what sort of? Tell us about.
Well, I think they kind of try and, when you first get allocated a wing, you'll go on your wing, and they're straight on to you, like seeing what you're about.
Yeah. All right. Just see how far they can push you.
See who you are, what you're doing, and
so in reality, it's not too different from when somebody is remanded or it's placed into custody. They say you set your stall out.
They kind of try and suss you out.
Right.
Yeah, see what you're about.
Yeah. Interesting. So
yeah,
tell us about that first day then. So what was the first incident that you ever attended?
The first one was actually the second day.
Yeah.
It was the second day. A lad had gone through for his dinner. He was twisting about his dinner, and he come out and he was like, "This is slop. Like, I'm not fucking eating this." Now, all I said to him was, "Nobody else is complaining, son. Do you want to go back to your damper?" Next thing we went like, and that was the second day.
Yeah.
That was my first rollabout. Aye.
And was there any point in that day when you thought, "Oh, what have I done?"
No, to be fair, I didn't. I mean, it was a 3-1 fight, like, so I knew I was always going to win it. So,
yeah.
So that was my second day in.
Yeah.
My first one, and I felt all right. To be fair, I wasn't. It happens in a flash, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just instinctive, I think.
Yeah. Today's episode is brought to you in association with Practice Plus Group, providing quality healthcare in secure settings. So Rosie, just remind us of what it was how you ended up, well, not in prison, working in the prison.
In
That's what I
prison.
meant.
So I was working in A&E at the time, and I'd sort of got an interest in sort of patients with drug and alcohol, like dependencies, chaotic
I'm
patients.
so sorry.
Absolutely, that is a criminal
You know what,
offence.
I do
Wait,
apologise.
wait.
That's turned on in my pocket for some reason.
I mean,
I'm
you
so
get
sorry.
a long sentence for that,
Yeah,
Gary.
no,
in,
honestly,
in podcast
I turned it
jail
off.
straight away.
It won't even turn off. It's going weird.
I said to him, last thing I said was, don't be
I've
that
turned
guy.
that off there.
Do you know what?
I turned that off, I swear to you. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry about that.
Honestly.
So, Rosie, how did you end up working in a prison?
So I was working in A&E at the time, and basically I just developed sort of an interest in patients that were coming back into A&E quite a lot with sort of drug and alcohol dependencies, or sort of mental health as well. A lot of mental health we were seeing in A&E, people that sort of had, or people who were homeless, and I know that that could have been anybody.
Yeah.
So I did have an interest in working with specifically these type of patients. So I applied for a job as a substance misuse nurse in Armley prison.
Oh, in the prison, yeah.
Yeah. So I got that job, and then I was just sort of winging it, I guess. And I got in there, and it was nothing like I imagined, I don't think.
Tell us about the first day then. So you walk into Armley Jail as the substance. What was your title again?
Substance misuse nurse. So
So your first day, how was that?
I can't really remember it, to be honest, because
That
I think
bad?
it was all, it was just a blur. But again, I think it's the noise. You don't expect somewhere I can't put my finger on it, but it's just the noise is just a different type of noise that you've ever heard. I remember I had actually done a placement as a student for a day in Humber prison.
Got you.
And someone was on the netting. And
What does that mean for people who don't understand? What does someone on the netting mean?
So basically, there's a netting across from, on the sort of wing levels, there's a netting that goes across, so people can't necessarily jump off
or throw somebody else off.
But people get on there sometimes for like a protest or to meet demands or something like that. So there I was as a little student nurse, and following a nurse around with a big emergency bag on her back, and it was just the pure noise of everyone banging on the doors. It's hard to explain, but it's just different. But my adrenaline running, it was something I really enjoyed. So
So how long did you do that role for?
I did that for maybe a year and a half. I did really want to go into prescribing medication. That's something I've always wanted to do.
So you're a prescribing nurse now,
yeah. So I then got my Band 6 role in primary care, because I also loved responding to the emergencies, having a radio, going to blue calls and things like that.
You work in prison for the radio, is that?
Yeah, definitely. I do. I don't like the radio now.
Right.
I don't like it now.
Because it makes you busy.
Yeah, very busy. It's always non-stop. And then from that, I did my prescribing and went back into substance misuse as the prescriber for that, and doing clinics and things like that to try and help people get stable on some sort of medication before they get out.
Yeah. So, Gary, how old were you? Let's start there. How old were you when you were first ever remanded into custody?
15.
15.
Yeah.
That's really young. Do you look back now and think that's insane?
Well, I've got a 15-year-old daughter, and she's an angel, really. And I quite often, some of my friends obviously were up to no good with me at the time, and we feel blessed. When we look at our lives, we can see how crazy things were at that time.
And so you, if you don't mind talking about it, Gary, you were remanded for what? What was it you had happened?
I was fighting with a couple of individuals from around the community, and there'd been a situation going on for a while, and they approached the flat where I was living and stuff, and a fight ensued, and I stabbed one of them 9 times. Lucky I didn't kill him, and then another friend of mine wounded another guy with a straight razor. So it was really vicious, abhorrent stuff. Yeah.
So when you look back at that kind of stuff and that person, do you feel a link? Do you feel that is you, or do you feel like you've completely changed, or do you feel that like you've just improved that person?
I think you're looking back, and I'm sure you might be able to identify with this. I hope you can. It's like an actor on a stage, really.
Yeah.
And it's like a different. It's like watching a film. It's it's as you recollect all those things and all that drama and violence and crime. So, but I think that is indeed part of me, and that's why a part of the person that I am today, because of all those experiences.
Mm-hmm. So, Tom, tell us about your sort of progression. So, what would be the career progression of a prison officer? Do you start at a certain level and then?
Yeah, you'll start off as a basic grade officer. Mm-hmm. I had no ambitions to get promoted or anything. I was just wanting to learn the job. Mm-hmm. There's options you can take. I mean, there was DST. You could go into security. Mm-hmm. You could be a dog handler.
What's DST?
Dedicated search team.
All right, yeah.
So there's different areas of the jail if you want to progress, or you want a different type of job.
Yeah, yeah.
But the majority of the time, I was just what they called a landing tramp.
Right.
I was just on the wings. Yeah.
Is that an official job title, or is it?
That's what we call it. Just a landing tramp.
Landing tramp, eh?
Just a grunt.
Yeah.
And I quite enjoyed it, to be fair.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I kind of, once you find your feet, because obviously everything is new. It's like prisoners when they first came in.
Yeah.
It's like information overload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're trying to get to know the lads on your wing, who's who, what they're about, who the wrong uns are, who the lads that are all right are. And I just enjoyed the day-to-day banter. Because to be fair, in all my time, I probably got on with 4 more than I fell out with. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so when you first started, Tom, it was in Durham, was it?
Yeah.
What were the big issues at the time? What were the things that you dealt with on a daily basis?
There seemed to be a lot of, staff do get assaulted and staff were assaulted.
Yeah.
But it was normally prisoner on prisoner.
Right.
And that tends to stem from debt, even back in the day.
Mm-hmm. So violence was the biggest issue that you dealt with then?
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, violence and self-harm wasn't so prevalent back in the day.
Right.
Certainly not in your day. And that, I think that's getting progressively worse. Like,
so what do you attribute that to? Is that like it's
mental health,
isn't it?
Mental health, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a discussion earlier where you didn't about. Yeah. I think some prisoners, they're very clever. If there's a way they can circumvent the system to their benefit, like the ACT system is for those that are at threat of self-harm.
What's the ACT system? Did you say?
Didn't ask us.
Don't explain. Let's just make it up. Make
something up. Teamwork, innit? It's
yeah. Oh gosh, my manager's going to kill me.
Sorry, I'll tell you what. I'll pop it up. People can see what it is.
It's a document. If you think somebody has expressed thoughts of self-harm or suicide, it's quite a thorough document, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all about, you put care plans in there, and it's all about keeping them safe.
Yeah.
And then there's a daily diary, any actions, any interactions, any conversations, anything that needs to and goes into this ACT document.
Yeah.
And the number of times you have to observe them and have conversations with them. Everything's in there, and it's all to do with their care. But not at the time when I was in uniform, but when I'd left the job, obviously they talked to me as a civilian. They often use it to get what they want, because in their care plan, you put all the issues of why they want to self-harm. So if they tried the application system, if they asked officers and it wasn't getting done, they would cut themselves, get put on an ACT, and then have it put in the care plan. And the thing that annoyed me more than anything, is for me, it detracted from those that really needed the help for the document.
What I was thinking there,
And that was a bit of a pet peeve for me. They kind of used that system.
Yeah.
And I've lost my train of thought, but that's...
No.
And it was getting to know who was who.
Yeah.
On the wing, getting to know your prisoners. And like I say, most of the time, I got on with most of them.
Yeah. So what? How big an issue were drugs when you started?
Yeah, there was. I mean, there wasn't the stuff that... Spice wasn't invented back in the 90s.
Yeah.
That was a later edition.
So what was it predominantly that people were...
prescribed meds were big. Cannabis was big.
Gary, what was it like when you were first in there? I mean, probably at the time you didn't see them as issues, but what was going on?
For me, I think, again, you're finding about your environment and the kind of law of the jungle and what your place is in that. And for me, trying to manipulate the system, as Tom's mentioned, as best you can to navigate your way through and to, it literally is kind of, there is no flight, it's fight. or be dominated, or so that was kind of trying to find your way, and you establish new friendships and boundaries as well. So yeah, like I say, a lot of fighting done early on, but when that was out the way and people knew you were game, then it tended to be okay. And which officers were best to approach if you needed something, or and which ones just wouldn't speak to you.
Just to for reassurance's sake, is it possible as somebody going into prison to navigate your way through that and not get involved?
Yeah, I think it is, but I've seen it done, and I managed to do that in my second sentence. Really, I still had the odd fight and stuff, but I was older then, and I was certainly in YP, young prison, YYs. It was very difficult because obviously testosterone, ego, everybody trying to carve out a reputation. Then it was a lot more violent. Violence still happened in the adult kind of prisons and stuff, but I was more of a politician and a bit more Machiavellian. Than what I'd been when I was a young man. So yeah, a little bit more wise to the ways of the world. So yeah.
So Rosie, when you first started, what were the issues that you were? Obviously, you started off working in addiction, so clearly they would have been issues.
Yeah,
so what was going on there then?
A lot of issues with the medication. So if they were getting a certain medication on the inside in the community, obviously there's a lot more risks with prescribing drugs that can be diverted or used to do something else with. So that was a big issue in the confirmation of medication as well. What
do you mean by the confirmation of medication?
So when someone comes in, we need sort of evidence from their community GP of what they're on, and that can take at least a few days, especially on the weekend. It's a nightmare trying to get any confirmation. And if you're not having your medication, especially if it's for your mental health or even physical health medication, it can be a really big problem. It's either helping or you could be withdrawing from it or anything like that. So that was a big issue, and obviously drugs and diverting medication is another one. A lot of self-harm as well. Like
when you say diverting medication, do you mean being sold on? So we have a medication hatch where people come and get the medication. They can't just have it in possession unless it's sort of a drug it's not tradable, it's not high in value. So they come to the medication hatch and they'll try all sorts of different ways to hide it. You have people just sort of like wiping their mouth, or if they've got methadone, keeping it in the mouth and then passing it on to somebody else. There's loads of different ways. But it just poses a risk because for whoever might buy that medication, if they've never had it, they've got a low tolerance to something. Risk of overdose and things like that. And of course it makes it more difficult for people who genuinely need that medication because there'll be more hoops to go through to get it, I imagine.
Yeah, it's not as easy as just going to your GP and asking to be put on something. You've got to look at balance it out and look at the risks with the medication. But obviously people do need medication, and some people do need pain, like addictive pain medication to manage pain. So it's just education as well, and making sure that people know the risks involved with it.
And so what sort of socio-economic background are the majority of people that you see from?
I think the majority is people that are homeless, people that are from a low socio-economic background, really. But you do get all walks of life, don't you? You do for other types of offences. The small crime seems to be normally people from a lower class background, and then it could be that, you get a middle class businessman who's been doing fraudulent activity. Do you know what I mean? And
is there a difference in attitude of when they present to you when they arrive?
I think people that have been in before, lower class that are in and out, and if they're going out homeless, they're sort of set up to fail in some ways. They've gone out to you're going out homeless without any accommodation, you're more likely to need drugs to get by, But, I think that people that are not aware of prison and things like that, they expect more, in a sense.
So what do you mean they're a bit more demanding?
More demanding because they just don't know how prison works.
And so it's like a trip to the GPs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it should be. Our healthcare should reflect what in the prison exactly the same. But obviously, we've got a lot of different challenges with that.
So are the problems different then? So would you say like so would somebody from a middle class background convicted of a large fraud or whatever it was, would they have slightly different issues than perhaps somebody coming from a poorer background?
Yeah and no. I think mental health can affect anyone. Addiction can affect anyone, can't it? So I think it's just presented differently.
Context-wise,
it's just presented differently. So someone might, get on the netting or have a fight to get what they want, whereas somebody that's sort of not used to fighting, had a stable home on the outside, they'd probably could be more manipulative to get what they want, or it just depends. But it is all the same issues, really. It's mental health and coping in jail, I think, and missing their families and things like that.
I don't know if Gary would agree, but I tend to find there was hierarchy of crime.
Right.
Kind of bank robbers.
All right.
Bank robbers up here, kind of sex offenders at the bottom, and there was a kind of hierarchy, wasn't there?
Yeah. And so would that affect how somebody was sort of received and treated by...
You're standing within the wing.
Right. That's interesting, isn't it? So it's a sort of a criminal class system.
There's kind of a hierarchy, and it's depending on your offence.
Does that still exist today? Because, in other conversations that I've had, we've maybe talked about once upon a time there were sort of gangsters, criminals, and now there's not quite so much of a structured...
I mean, now your gangsters tend to be top-end drug dealers.
Yeah.
But there's... I don't know, it's like there doesn't seem to be as many armed robbers for some that sort of stuff just kind of died off, hasn't it?
Yes, trade.
I would say probably 85% of Durham their crimes will be linked to drugs in one way or another, whether that's burgling to feed the habit, robbing to feed the habit, or selling drugs because there's a lot of money in it.
Right.
Yeah, I would say 85% of our prisoners probably...
And domestics as well, yeah.
Drug-related.
Domestic violence and stuff like that as well.
That's massive, mind.
Is it?
Yeah, far more than it ever was.
So you mean the prison population, a lot of people are there for committing domestic violence?
I mean, I'm going back a few. I was on night shift.
Yeah.
And we've got a computer system where you can go on and you can get the demographics of the prison, so you can break them down to age, religion, all of that sort of stuff. And domestic violence, there was something like 120.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And what stuck out to me was the age. They tended to be the younger ones. There was a lot of them. That just struck me as a lot.
Yes,
for domestic violence. And
so what do you think's going on there then? Is that obviously that's a societal thing, isn't it?
I don't know whether it's because the police are taking more action now. They
I think it's taken more seriously.
And we talk about it more, don't we? It's like mental health. I'm sure we had mental health back in the day. It didn't seem so in Gary's day.
Yeah.
You were just a bit odd. When you weren't mentally ill, you were just a little bit odd. But yeah, domestic violence is a big thing now. Surprised me, shocked me.
So, So Tom, you're a prison officer now. What was the first thing that happened where you thought, oh, maybe this wasn't the best idea I've ever had?
Right, I can recollect it clearly.
Can you? Yeah.
I mean, people say, were you ever scared? Day to day, I would say no.
Right, yeah.
I got on with most lads. I was on B-Wing. I was on my own. There was a group of travellers, about 12 of them, and then another group of 12 on the other end, and I'm stood in the middle saying, this doesn't have to happen, lads. And I'm thinking, will I just let them get at it?
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do as one person?
And by the grace of God, or sheer luck, it never went off. I don't know whether some of them respect it, because I didn't know a lot of the lads, to be fair.
Yeah.
I was like, lads, this doesn't have to happen. Nothing's gone off so far. This didn't happen if we all go back to ourselves now.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why I was like, fucking hell. That was close,
You would have been a sandwich in a big old fight.
I would like to think they wouldn't have touched me, but you don't know, do you?
Yeah. But there must have been times when you thought, when you saw your life flash before your eyes.
Yeah. Believe it or not, one of them was, I used to work in the segregation unit.
Right.
That's where all the naughty lads go. It's kind of the end of the road when they're not complying to the rules on the main road.
Yeah.
So all the bad lads go down there. And I actually went to save his life because he'd rung his bell, but we walked over, I looked in the flap, and there was just a pool of blood, like really loads of blood.
Oh.
So obviously your natural instincts to go in, me and another lad called Paul Dowell, we went in and he tried to slash us. And I was a bit, yeah. I've been assaulted with table legs.
Right.
Yeah, that was quite scary. Yeah.
So what, I mean, obviously without respecting people's confidentiality, what had happened then in that? So what was the outcome of that? You get there and
Well, basically,
guy's in a pool of blood, he tries to attack you.
I managed to grab I stood in his arm to start with, but he was trying to lash out at us, so I stood in his arm. Paul got his other arm, and we got the blade off him. But obviously, he was bleeding profusely, and just applied direct pressure till the nurses come with
the bag.
With a bag and the radio.
Yeah.
And he said it was lucky, like, because he lost an awful lot of blood.
So was he trying to
And
kill
I'm
himself?
thinking, Christ, I was only trying to help, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so was he trying to kill himself? Is that what was going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was a suicide.
Yeah, I think so. Gosh. Yeah. Well, I say that. Why would you ring your bell if you want to die? Because you're going to draw attention. But
Well, I mean, a lot of the time, it's a last ditch kind of effort to get some help, or maybe change your mind. I think
sometimes though it's not raging against an individual; it's raging against the whole machine and the situation you're in. And
I've said that. That's the other thing. I mean, I often, not all the time, but sometimes I can accept the frustration from prisoners, and they weren't shouting at me; they were shouting at the system. And sometimes you've got to take that attitude, or you'd be offended all day long, wouldn't you? Some of the names you get called. But it is raging against the system, I think, rather than the individual.
Do you see any of that, Rosie? Do you?
I do see that a lot, especially doing the reception prescribing side of it when I'm not given the answer that they want to hear sometimes. Get called absolutely anything. But it isn't, you can't take it personal because it isn't against you. It's not, they know you're not you're just following the rules of and trying to keep people safe with the medication. But you can't take it. You can't take it.
Yeah, I mean, are there times when you feel at risk? I mean, tell us about it. I mean, what's in place to protect you? I suppose I'm interested in.
So officers often, we have a good relationship with you guys, and we obviously, they are there to help. They do get us out of some sticky situations. I had one time where I don't know how it had happened, and it's not ideal at all, but I was dealing with a guy that had ligatured. And again, he woke up, we were trying to help him. He come round, I think he'd been unconscious for a few seconds. He came round and was obviously very angry. And I ended up sort of at the back of the cell while the officers were restraining him. And I was trying to get out of the cell, but obviously trying not to, and they couldn't get hold of him. And he was quite a big guy, and he was just, so in those circumstances, you are a bit like, oh God, something bad could have happened there.
I mean, that
shouldn't happen, but
and do you take that home with you? I mean, how do you cope?
Yeah, I think talking it through, talking it to your other colleagues, because I think if you just tried to explain it to someone that's not worked in a prison, it's hard. They can't really understand what you've seen, especially with the bad stuff when people do end up losing their lives. It's not like when someone dies in a hospital, because you're actually seeing them in their sort of home. It's your home, isn't it? It's where all their belongings are and things like that. So and I know from the prison side, they have to cut people down. So of course, you get a lot of trauma from that. But I think it is just talking it through with people that understand.
Is there anything sort of in place to help you? Is there do you have a weekly sort of?
Yeah, so as soon as sort of something like a death or something, a big incident happens, we have a debrief from the healthcare and the prison side all together, what we could have done better, what went well, if something did, how we worked as a team. Nothing went well in that situation, but how we worked as a team, what could be improved and things like that. And then afterwards we have a cold, do you guys do the same? Debrief. Yeah, cold debrief.
There's two not organisations, but within prison, certainly after major incidents like hangings, deaths and stuff, there's staff care and welfare team, and that's normally prison officers. We've also got the trim, which we adopted from the army, and it's post-traumatic stuff.
Oh, right, yeah. So that's an ongoing
if you want to
support.
Use it,
yeah.
We generally refer to somebody. If somebody's cut somebody down, they would normally refer them to them.
Time off.
Yeah. Normally. I mean, it affects some people. It doesn't affect others.
Well, Well, in the immediate, I think
yes,
everybody will experience the trauma at some point,
I
won't
think
they?
there's a lot more emphasis placed on a kind of trauma-informed practice and post-trauma kind of support now than what there's ever been.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I would say that.
so when you started, Tom, was it more a case of, stiff upper lip, get on with it?
A lot of ex-military.
Yeah.
Just, get after it. Give your head a shake. Like, get a backbone. It was just get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'd say it's improved now. There's
Go and have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
That was the debrief.
Yeah.
Go and have a cup of tea and get your paperwork filled in.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a lot better now, to be fair. If you want the help, it's there.
Yeah.
I think.
It's interesting, that.
I mean, a lot of lads have left. I've a good friend of mine got to have 20 years service in post-traumatic, just couldn't face going back into the prison.
Yeah.
But it was something that happened 2.5 years ago.
Right.
It's just massively impacted for some reason now. And he could not walk back in the gates, like. So he's
Quite often it presents months, years, decades down the line, doesn't it, trauma?
Yeah, and because they hadn't managed to save the lad, they'd done CPR on him. It just couldn't bring him back, but clearly it affected him long term, like.
It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I think self-harm as well. Some of the self-harm is absolutely horrendous,
it's like nothing you've ever could
Oh, yeah.
imagine.
Is that a more recent phenomena? Is that?
I think it's getting.
I've always known it, but it's more prolific now.
Yeah, I think different ways as well, like ways we wouldn't even think of doing. We've had people like put toilet brushes down their throats and things like that.
Jeez.
Yeah. Stop sticking stuff up their penis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, one lad, he's dead now. I won't give his name.
Yeah.
But he wasn't properly. It was my very first self-harm.
Right.
And he'd opened himself up, and honestly, I'd see his intestines, and he was just lying on his bed. He was a prolific self-harm. I mean, it was that bad, his arms, they couldn't stitch him anymore. He cut his own ears off, and he wasn't mentally ill. Although some people say, well, he must be. He wasn't. He wasn't mentally, well, he wasn't.
I mean, but that's a really tricky question, isn't it, though? I mean, like,
it's not
I can't imagine being sane of mind, cutting my own ears off and opening my stomach up. So, I mean, that'd be an argument that prison's not the right place for that person.
Oh,
there's a huge percentage of people who really could do with a secure setting.
Yeah.
Where they can get the right help.
Yeah.
But again, the assessment and the footfall and how busy everyone is. It's recognised, but it's difficult, isn't it?
I would agree with Gary, mate. I know a lot of lads in there that should be in a hospital and not a jail.
Yeah.
But we just haven't got the bed spaces.
And we can refer people for the gatekeeping and things like that, but they could be waiting like a long time to actually get a bed. So it's like a problem as well in the community. It's mental health beds are just really hard to get.
It's definitely more prevalent now.
So you two have got an interesting relationship. I mean, Rosie, feel free to answer this question truthfully. If you were walking down a dark alley and you saw these two coming towards you, which one would you think was the prison officer?
You know what? I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
Well, that's strange because a lot of people think when we go into the prisons,
they
think I'm the con.
Yeah.
They think he's a copper. Do you believe that?
They are police officer.
I can see that actually. I can
He's
see
been
that.
accused of that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it just shows you uniform is like so important, isn't it? Because if like you two were in just switched uniforms back in the day, you wouldn't know, would you?
If we switched uniforms back in the day, I would have tried to escape.
Yeah, well, there is that.
Definitely. So
might have had worse consequences for Tom, I think, if you ended up
absolutely
locked in there.
Yeah.
So when did you two first cross paths?
Right. Well, Gary came. I was 96. Was it? You came on the Section 18s.
Yeah, I was in that. So that was the second sentence in the latter part of the 90s into 2000.
Yeah. He was on remand at Durham. To be fair, Gary was a bit of a grey man, weren't you? He was a clever prisoner. Just keep your head below the parapet. But I did know a lot of your associates in there.
Absolutely,
Yeah, a lot of lads he allegedly went armed robbing with and various other bits and pieces. So, that was Gary back in the day. Gary described himself as a little bit rough around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
The police didn't agree with that.
What was the police's definition of Gary?
A lot different to that. But that's how Gary described himself.
Well, from the National Crime Squad to the regional crime squad to the play, I was a very violent individual.
Yeah.
I could be very violent.
Yeah.
So I would think that they would think I was an active criminal committing some really serious offences.
Yeah.
I've been arrested for murder, cautioned,
Yeah.
multiple Section 18s, bank robbery.
What's a Section 18, just for those who don't know?
Wounding with intent.
Right.
So causing
it's a
really
big deal.
bad violence with a weapon, where you really intend to cause serious harm.
Yeah.
Like I say, bank robbery, security van robbery, drugs, multiple raids for drugs and arrests for drugs, firearms. So obviously my criminal intelligence file doesn't make for very good reading.
Yeah.
So the police would take a very dim view of me at the time.
Yeah, yeah. What did you think of him when you first met him?
Rough round the edges.
Rough around the edges. No,
Do you know what it is? For me, if somebody had told me back in the day, you're going to be working with an ex-criminal like Gary, I think Gary undersells himself. Before I start this is all alleged.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Bank robber, man of extreme violence, just living that criminal lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, he says he wasn't Pablo Escobar, but he sold a lot of drugs, it'd be fair to say. He inflicted a lot of violence on a lot of people. He allegedly kidnapped other drug dealers and tortured them. And what shocked me, I'll shorten a long story.
No, carry on.
Remembering what Gary was, and then when I reconnected with him, it was 2017. He actually came back into Durham prison. I was actually managing the gym at the time. And the governor rang us, the number one governor. He says, Tom, I've got this ex-prisoner coming in, Gary Crooks. He says, you're babysitting him. I was like, yeah, exactly. Can I swear?
Yeah.
I says, what the fuck's that got to do with the gym, governor? He said, doesn't matter, Tom, you're doing it. You can't have keys. You've got to babysit him.
Yeah.
Everywhere he went, I had to go with him. Apart from the toilet, obviously, I stopped outside. So he came in. Now, bear in mind what he was to this bloke I was now seeing.
Yeah.
Gary said I stitched him up. I just set him a challenge. All right. So what I did is I had to get 12 lads to attend this course.
Yeah.
So I trawled the prison for all the troublemakers, all the lads that were seg rats, always in trouble with us, always fighting, taxing other prisoners. Basically, I filled the class full of shit, if I'm honest. Just to see what he was about, just test about.
Yeah.
Totally changed my mind within hours, 1 or 2 sessions. I was like, wow, I was just blown away by, because I'd seen a lot of programs delivered in the prison, but I think what Gary had was the credibility. Like I couldn't sit in front of a class of addicts, prisoners who were addicts, and talk about addiction because I've never been an addict. Where this kid had been there, he'd done it, wore the t-shirt, and for me, the most profound part for me was the change. I still had my doubts, to be fair. Anyway, cutting a long story short, we finished the program, stayed in touch, started socialising, started going to your boxing club, didn't I?
That's right.
Stayed in touch and we started and become firm friends. Even though I had a few raised eyebrows, ex-prisoner,
Yeah.
Me too.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, there was a bit of a dynamic going on there. Certainly with colleagues and that, what you hang around.
Because, that would cast, there might have been aspersions cast. How come those two are friends outside? What was going on before?
Absolutely.
There was a few eyebrow raised, but not that bothered us.
Yeah.
Because I knew what he was. Although I still had this nagging doubt. Has he really changed? Because I've heard it loads of times, I've changed. Anyway, the long and short of that, he rung us, didn't you?
I did.
He rung us up, he goes, come into the office, blah, 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 what a chat, offered us a job. And I quit.
So that was the first time, and I offered Tom a job to come. I'd won the contract for 4 prisons.
Yeah.
So I offered him to come along, and then COVID hit, and we lost the work.
Yeah.
So he went back into the prison service.
Yeah.
And now all the contracts have returned. So he's just left the prison service again. So, yeah.
So, but for me, why it's such a good story is if Gary Crooks can change, the old Gary, to what he is now, and who would have thought we'd have been working together?
Yeah.
And I would say it, I'm not just saying it because he sat here. I trust the lad with my life. I just, the change in his life, and I know it wasn't him. Can I tell a story about
Absolutely,
yeah. It was a lad called Artie, God rest his soul. He's dead.
God rest him.
He's an ex-prisoner, but I actually got on quite well with him. He was one of my number 1 cleaners on E-Wing when I was managing E-Wing.
Yeah.
Got on quite. He's just getting out after a sentence, hadn't he? Yeah. Came over, me and Gary were drinking. Come over. Oh, how are you doing? I always got on all right with the kid. Keeping out of bother, the usual stuff, And he actually offered Gary an armed robbery job. It was in and out. Was it 400 grand or something?
To the best of my recollection, allegedly.
This is all alleged, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'd set this job up. He'd cased the job. It was a case of in and out, and you wanted Gary to do it. Turned it down. I thought, he's changed.
Yeah.
Because it would be so easy, wouldn't it? And bear in mind, would you fair to say you were an addict?
Yeah, definitely.
There isn't many drugs he hasn't took.
Yeah.
And you go to parties, it's round him,
yeah,
and he's not. and that just
Well, I think it's around you all the time.
Yeah.
Certainly, if you're selling it and stuff like that, you've got access to chemicals all the time. But I think the one, there's a lot of good things about our journey, but I think when we going into the prisons and meeting people in the community with an offending background, especially, it's the power of change. So, you know, if I can leave the criminal lifestyle and, you know, leap into business, of which I knew nothing about. I was an entrepreneur in a very different way.
Yeah.
But I knew nothing about the straight life and the straight world. And Tom can leave his job and, you know, come together and we can work together. Then I think that shows real rehabilitation, real recovery, and the power of real change.
Yeah.
You know, that's where it's at for me.
It's peer support in a way, isn't it? It's you know, seeing yourself in a mirror.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important for people. So Gary, was there a kind of road to Damascus moment, or was this a gradual thing? Was there a day when you were sat somewhere and it just went?
I asked.
Well, there was a couple. I always think the biggest lie you can ever tell is the one that you tell to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I was living the life, and you know, I didn't mind committing acts of violence. I didn't mind fighting. You know, I didn't mind doing whatever I had to do in that world, mm-hmm. and I was true to that mm-hmm. code and what I did. Yeah. That was the life, and that was all I was doing. But a number of things happened. I was on some, you know, on a job, if you like, and I looked around and thought, and I saw the horror on people's faces, and I could no longer kind of justify that. And when I left that place, I was like, I can't do this. And then heading towards a fight, I didn't mind going towards a fight, but I used to think, I hope this guy doesn't turn up. Or when the rest of the guys were laughing in the back of the car about, you know, we were going to catch someone coming outside of a pub and kidnap him and commit an act of violence on him, I was thinking to myself, please don't be in this pub. So I was living a lie for a number of years, but I was terrified of change. That's what was going on. I was terrified of leaving that culture, what my friends would think, you know, and it's frightening. I didn't know the way forward, but I knew I had to leave it behind and really take the chance to make real positive change and help people to make a difference in their lives and change mine for the better.
Because, I mean, a lot of people might find it hard to empathise with you, but I imagine it's quite a high pressure life to live. So there must be stress and it must be difficult.
Oh, indeed.
It must be exhausting.
For anyone listening to this or watching it, when you're in that criminal lifestyle, you're under intense pressure from all directions. And obviously, you know, you tumble into it. And I was a criminal by choice and driven by criminal greed and all of those things. You know, forget the trauma that I experienced, which was probably part of getting on the journey. I had multiple chances to get off the bus. I chose not to, and I pursued it. But the amount of pressure you're under, you know, constant surveillance, other criminals, you know, violence at any turn, you know, you're hyper vigilant all of the time. You can't rest. You know, I wouldn't walk down the street with a set of headphones on. You know, weapons all over the house, weapons in the shower in case the door gets kicked in when you're in the shower. Where you going, who you're looking for on the street. If you're in a place, back to the wall looking for the exits if you had to get out. And you're in this hypervigilant state constantly, and I never recognised that. And then, you know, you might use substances, alcohol, cocaine, whatever. And really you think you'd have a great time, but I was self-medicating because of anxiety, which I didn't understand at the time. So a lot of fears involved as well, despite what anyone says.
Can you put your finger on anything that you think it was? Because, you know, you've described to us very eloquently the notion of just feeling a gradual change, of not being interested in this, finding that a little bit repulsive. I mean, there must have been a seed somewhere or something that just changed enough just to make you. Were you just tired? I mean, what was it?
Tired as well, but I think along the journey that I'd led, I was very fortunate that a lot of good people had kind of mentioned change to us and said, you know, what exactly are you doing, including some police officers. And then I think I was out of it, but the birth of my daughter as well, then I knew there was no going back, because I thought, you know, I don't want her. There's still time to change who I am and inspire her and not be this criminal, or certainly never experience a prison visit situation, which is incredibly difficult for everyone involved. It's tragic, you know. There was a desire. I used to help people with my fists and baseball bats in the community. And there was a desire to still do that and use my journey to promote positive change. And I quickly recognised, you know, there was a lot of suspicion about that change from criminals and the community and, you know, and all the organisations who pursued us. But I thought, I can't change what other people think about me. I can just change how I feel about me and this is who I'm going to be moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So, Rosie, how does it feel for you? Do you know what I mean? Because you work in the system, you see what should we call them? Previous Garys quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but surely there must be a little bit of maybe a doubt or two in your mind as well, when you're listening, is it?
Yeah, definitely. I think because we do see people, we can make a big plan for somebody to get on, get clean or, reduce the methadone. This time is the time that we're definitely, you're definitely not going to go back out. And then we'll see them 2 days later and we're starting again from the beginning. So definitely sometimes you do think, like, what are we doing it for? But then you do see people that actually do change, and that's what you're doing it for, because out of 10 people, if one person changes, then you're doing something right. So it is, sometimes it is a bit demoralizing when people, come back in, but I think there are people that change, and there is hope.
Have you got an example
of
because I mean, one of the things you see in recovery communities and so on and so forth is this notion that there's always hope for somebody, no matter how many times they've made a mistake, how many times they've fallen off the wagon, and it's easy to write people off. So what would be an example, obviously bearing in mind that you need to
definitely
maintain people's anonymity and so on and so forth. What would be a good example of something that's made you go, do you know what, this is all worthwhile?
I think it's not to do with addiction really, but it's to do with we had a young guy who came in, I can't remember what he was in for. It was a burglary charge or something like that. But he was very, very complex. He'd be flooding his cell and not eating or drinking, doing a food refusal, really aggressive behaviour. And he'd been on every single wing and caused chaos on every single wing. And we put a lot of input in trying to help him and trying to get his health back on track, and mental health had a lot of input in trying to, see if there was anything, a mental illness going on. And I don't know what changed. One day something clicked. He started taking his medication, he started engaging with services. He got released and we've never seen him again. And it was just, he was engaging with us as well, like laughing and joking. I can't tell you what changed, but it's got out and he's just done really well for himself.
The irony is success for you is never seeing someone again.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping he's doing well anyway. He's not back in prison, so.
So at very short notice, maybe yesterday or the day before, I did ask everybody if they fancied bringing a little something in, a little bit of a conversation conduit, because we've all got things that we rely on and parts of our life, and just things that are quite symbolic. Even if we're not spiritual or religious or something like that, there's always a little something that kind of gets us through the day. So, Rosie, lean over the back of there. What have you've brought with you?
Yeah, I've bought a little badge from when I was a student nurse that someone made me. I think it was my mentor made me it.
And just for anybody who's listening rather than watching, it's a nice round badge with a very happy-looking nurse on the front of it, and Rosie written on it as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
So in nursing, the first thing you learn basically is that you need to make sure, like, you say your name to a patient. I think there was the campaign, wasn't there, about a nurse with cancer who she was dying, and nurses were coming in and just doing the thing with IVs or whatever, and then going out. And then there was a big campaign on making sure you say, like, hello, my name is. And I think that sort of, with my name on, it just reminds me, like, to treat everybody, even when you're busy and even when you're having the worst day ever, whatever's going on in your back life. This could be someone's worst day of their life, They could have nearly died, anything. It could, or anything. They've just come into prison. You've got whatever's going on with your life, you need to make sure you're treating patients with respect. And
so even if it might not seem as big a deal to somebody else on the day, to that individual it could be.
You have a lot of times where you think, why are you going on about this? It's not that big of a deal, but to them that could be the one thing that makes them feel safe when they come in. So yeah, that's my thing. And
Gary, you've brought in
I brought a sand timer, of all things. It's in my house. So I think for me, having been alive 50 years now, by the grace of God, that I recognise that we're not here forever. And time's our most precious commodity, because without it, there's nothing. And I think looking back at my time in jail, I did get the best out of it. Sometimes I didn't realise I was, but I was reading, I was exploring my spirituality. I was looking ahead in a strange way, because I could only see crime, but I knew there was something else. There was a feeling within. And I say this in all the work we ever do in the prisons: use the time and don't let the time use you.
Yeah. I'm very interested in that notion of it's never time wasted. Whatever happens, you know, it's all information, it's all learning, it's all, you know, I mean, my life hasn't been, you know, always been rosy, but I wouldn't change anything. But, do you know what I mean? All the bad times, I would leave them in there, because they make you the person that you are now.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Tom.
All right.
This big fella over here.
I've just brought this fella. It was in 2009. I stumbled into bodybuilding at 38-year-old.
Just for the people at home, I just described to them. So we've got like what you would call an Adonis over here on a plinth, an Adonis on a plinth, a big old muscly guy with what is a very impressive amount of medals around there.
All winning medals then.
Winning medals. Tell us about that then.
Started the journey when I was 38, and I use this on our courses, the one I got and it's about, you know, it's like, I understand addiction and stuff, and the challenges and the never giving up thing. 38-year-old people, like, you haven't got the genetics, you'll never do it, you're far too old. At 38 you probably are, but I never set off on the journey to prove anybody wrong, just to see how good I could be. And it just, my first show, I got absolutely decimated, come absolutely nowhere. But instead of whinging about it, I went to see the judges, where am I weak, where do I need to improve, and from there went on to win the British bodybuilding title in 2009 for
British
bodybuilding champion in 2009 in my weight class.
Wow.
And I was 49. 49-year-old.
I'm 51. I've been going to the gym for a couple of years. That's giving me a lot of hope.
Competing against young lads in their 20s.
Yeah, brilliant.
So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So in your weight class, so it wasn't even like a veteran's?
It wasn't an age class, no.
Wow.
No.
I thought, if you're going to be the best, you've got to beat the best, haven't you? So that was that one. I often use that as the difficulty, and if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way.
Yeah.
If you don't, you'll find an excuse.
Yeah.
And it's quite a powerful one.
That's
brilliant. It is. All them challenges, and so, And additionally, I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, like, but I went on to represent the United Kingdom as well at the World Finals and the Europeans twice.
It's amazing.
Yeah, stood on the second proudest moment in my life, carrying the Union Jack onto the stage in Russia.
That's amazing.
Get in.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Kind of a few more quick fire things to get through. If you had some advice for somebody serving a sentence right now, what would it be?
Like Gary said, take all the support that you can get. There is so much, if you want it, there's so much we can do to help people. All the services are there, and use your time to put the work in, because people actually do want you to succeed. As much as the prison service can feel like it's getting people down, I don't think anyone's intention is for it to be bad. It's a good thing in some way.
People want you to succeed.
People
want, that's
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
people are wanting you to succeed.
If you take up the opportunities.
Yeah, and there's good and bad. You'll get some officers or some nurses that maybe don't put as much effort in, but you'll get good and bad everybody. And there are people out there that want to help you.
Brilliant. Gary?
For as difficult and as hard as a prison sentence can be, and the punishment, look at the lesson and cry freedom, and don't ever come back.
Brilliant. Tom?
For me, be honest with yourself. Take a long, hard look at yourself. If you want change, I mean, you've got to dig deep and look in the mirror. The bits you don't like, you need to change. But also, I think what's massively important, apart from housing and all the other stuff, is surround yourself with the right people. And I'm going to steal this off Gary because I love it. Treat a prison sentence like your funeral.
Right.
The good thing is, you get to see who comes, who sends you money, who writes to you, who visits you, who looks after your family while you're stuck in here.
Yeah.
If they're not at your funeral, when you get out at your wedding, don't invite them. They're not the people they're not your people.
Brilliant.
I love that. Stole that.
It's excellent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. I think that's a great note to end on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant.